Hello, it's Lisa Finks with Compass Real Estate, and welcome to our North Shore Market Report. If you have been receiving our newsletters or following us at all, you will know that we are all about the stats, we're all about the data. And the reason that we are so meticulous about watching our local market is because the North Shore market doesn't always behave the same way that the national housing market does, or even the Chicagoland market for that matter. So what you may be hearing in the press, what you're hearing in the news about scary interest rate hikes and inflation, and believe me, it's all very, concerning, doesn't mean the effects it's having elsewhere will happen here. So we are tracking everything very closely and want to share our results with you in this report. We're going to start with an overview summary of the 8 suburbs that we're tracking in particular, and then I'm going to drop down to one specific town, probably Wilmette, and show you how to read the more detailed charts if you have interest in doing so. At the end of this video, you will be able to click over to the link that will bring you to these charts so that you can study them if you'd like, and also sign up to receive updates as we update these every 2 weeks. We're going to be watching things very closely. Because right now the North Shore is still remaining pretty consistent, and there's a decent strength to our market, and we want to make sure that that continues to be the case. And if there's any hesitation or decline in the market, we want to see that as it's happening so that we can be well aware. So looking at this summary chart, we have our 8 suburbs, and we have Evanston with lower inventory, higher showings, higher contracts. So that's a pretty strong market still. You definitely, in our view, contracts are an indication of the strength of a market. If people are actually buying homes, that matters. A lower inventory is also helpful from a seller standpoint and for preserving price. Not as great for buyers, as you probably realize, but a lower inventory helps protect our price also. Higher showings or even what the showing numbers are relate to interest in the number of buyers that are out in the marketplace. Dropping down to Glencoe, they have a slightly higher inventory, their contracts are slightly lower, and their showings are slightly lower. Same with Glenview. Inventory slightly down, contracts slightly down, but the showings are way up, which suggests that people are taking their time as it is fall, and people have generally more time right now to look at homes and see more homes. So their showing activity is up. Kenilworth has even inventory, their contracts are a bit up, and their showings are up. So that's good news for Kenilworth. Northfield, their inventory is slightly down, but their contracts and their showings are remaining pretty consistent. And by the way, the comparison metric that I'm using is September. So what I'm doing is I'm watching to see on a monthly basis where the market starts declining. So if we're seeing numbers that are equal to September or lower or higher, it sort of indicates where our market is heading. And there is some normal fluctuation as we head into the fall and winter months. It's hard to account for that, but we can look back at past years to kind of get an idea of whether we're within the norm or not. And you'll see all that later in the video if you stick around and are interested to understand all that information. Continuing on to Northbrook, inventory is a bit down, so that's positive. Contracts are up and showings are up. So again, there's some strength in that marketplace. Wilmette inventory is even. And Wilmette has really had low inventory. So, if we're staying even, that's probably a good thing. Contracts are a bit lower, showings are a bit lower. And Winnetka, the inventory is creeping up a bit. Contracts are consistent, staying even, and showings are a bit lower. So now I'm going to take you down to Wilmette. And as you can see, we have embedded charts for all of these suburbs here on our webpage, and we will provide that link in a bit. I want to walk you through this chart in particular. This is for Wilmette as of October 15th, and it gives a 3-year look back at the market. I need to bring that up a little bit for you. As you can see, this blue line tracks showing activity over the last 3 years. The green bars show the available homes on the market in a given month, and the red or pink bars here represent the number of contracts. Down below, this table gives you the actual data so you can see the numbers that relate to this chart. Going back 3 years, we're starting in January of 19. This was more of a normal market. In fact, it was probably a bit of a buyer's market. And as you can see, showings were usually below the number of homes on the market. Coming up into 2020, we started having a pretty strong market, and then COVID hit, and we had a huge decline in showing activity. As people felt a little more comfortable, realized they didn't appreciate the density in the city and the demonstrations that were happening down there, there was an overwhelming interest on the North Shore and in many other suburban communities. So you saw the showing activity jump up to heights we've never seen since. So from that point on, showings have stayed pretty much well above the number of homes that have been available. In terms of inventory, if we're just looking at a quick, a quick look here, the inventory, and by the way, these numbers are for the last day of each given month. The inventory is fairly high back in 19, started declining a bit in 2020, obviously went down with respect to COVID as well. And then since COVID, it's been about a half of the year prior each year. So what I mean by that is 2021's inventory was about half of what 2020 was, and 2022 was about half of what 2021 was. So there were a lot of inventory issues, and if you were a buyer in this marketplace, you felt it long and hard, and if you were a seller, you probably reaped some of the benefits of that low inventory and high supply. You'll also see, I just want to point out while I'm here, that some of these pink bars are actually higher than the green bars, and the pink represent under contract. So the reason that's the case, you might be wondering how that's possible. The reason that's the case is that most of these transactions were happening within a matter of a couple of days. And as I mentioned earlier, the green bars track the number of homes on the last day of the month. So these homes were going under contract before they could be counted in these green bars. Looking, and here's where we're now really concentrating on what's going on with the market. So we're seeing what happened in September of 2022, and how do we look compared to last month? Where are we seeing a decline happen? So we're looking at the number of contracts, we're looking at the number of homes for sale, and we're also looking at the showing activity. And if you look at October 15th, which is the middle of the month, so you would expect, if we're staying consistent with September, that these numbers would be about half of the September numbers. And that's sort of the formula that we're using for all of these towns as you scroll through other graphs, if you have the interest to do so. So with respect to the number of under contracts in September to October, one would expect that with 23 in September, we would have about 11 or 12 in October. So we're slightly down with just 9. We have the same number of homes on the market. So that number stays consistent, and that's actually helpful and makes this metric all the more telling because we're operating with the same number of homes on the market. Showing wise, we had about 220 showings for the first half of October. We would have expected about 240 given the 487 of September. So those numbers are slightly lower as well, but not by a whole bunch. If we want to look back to other September to October time periods to see if this is normal for the fall or something unusual happening, it's a little challenging to do that because I'll tell you the last 2 falls we've had because of COVID have been unusual. But we can look back to 2019 as well. So I'll do a quick run through there. When we look at September to October of 2021, we actually have increased contracts in the month of October. We have lower homes on the market, so a smaller inventory, and we have heightened showing activity. So last fall from September to October was actually stronger and a very strong fall real estate market. Going back to 2020, when we were just starting to feel a little comfortable, with the pandemic, we had smaller number of under contracts from September to October, close to the same number of homes, but slightly less, and slightly fewer showings as well. And then going back to 19, which was more of a normal market, we had the same amount of under contracts from September to October. We had slightly fewer homes on the market, and we had about the same number of showings, particularly since there were fewer homes on the market. In fact, you might argue that the showing activity was probably up on a per home basis. So where does that bring us? Right now, Wilmette is showing possibly just the beginning stages of decline, but nothing that we're real concerned about. We really believe that going forward, the low inventory that's prevalent here on the North Shore is going to protect our prices, and the demand coming from the city and from relocation activity in particular is also going to help keep our market consistent and our prices from tumbling too much. We do have pricing information in here as well. As you can see, these numbers come through the end of the month. That's all that this will report, and this is automatically updated if you go to our website. September of 2022 started showing a slight decline in Wilmette housing prices. Again, though, this is coming off of historic highs. And then the month's supply is also starting to creep up again. We had dismally, crazy, insanely low inventory in Wilmette this past year, particularly this past spring. And with 0.4 houses average on the market, 0.4 months of houses on the market. We're now up to 1.5. Just for reference, a balanced market is 6 months worth of houses. So this is still very strongly a seller's market, and we anticipate it to stay so. However, again, that's why we're watching these statistics so closely, because there's a lot of information out in the national news and with respect to the housing market elsewhere that could eventually have some effects on us. So stick with us. We'll keep you updated on everything. We do have all of these details for all of the various suburbs on the North Shore. And if there's a suburb you're interested in that we haven't included, reach out. We're happy to draw up these charts and walk you through what's going on with the activity in that particular location. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks when we update these numbers again.